Good morning. Happy Thursday. How you doing? How you feeling? Welcome to another exciting episode of the Gareth Cliff Show. My name is Leban Khosana and I'm joined by two very, very beautiful people. The young, the energetic, the very smart Bakh'abantu who refers to himself as the intern, but those who know no, as well as the beautiful Sis Pumi, the very, very clever. She's about to open her own school in the future. Mother, big sister, leader, what? How are you guys doing?
Mbogodo.
Yes. What into what into Sipho?
Oh, Lebang, you should go everywhere with me and introduce me to people.
I'm happy to do. That's actually how I got this job. I was introducing Gareth on one of these like talk thingies, and he was like, "Get into my pocket. I'm taking you everywhere." And this is where I am. How are you guys
I'm
doing
telling
today?
you, it's the thing. It's the right thing. You know, I always used to watch like the Oprah show, and when it starts, she walks down the tunnel. Like y'all may be just a little bit too young to have seen Oprah in her heyday. She kind of walks through the tunnel, and there's like all the audience over here, and
Yeah.
people are losing their shit. They're like screaming, "Ah!" and she walks through and she touches people's hands and whatever. And I was just think that is one hell of a way to arrive at work. Like
Yeah.
walking into the office, if that's what everybody does. And then I had, then I had the baby,
Mm.
and when I got home, I'd get home after work and he'd be so in my house, like the garage is kind of like underground. I live on a slope, it's a funny place. Some people have seen what has happened to some of the neighbors. And as I like park my car and
Mm.
open the door, I would hear him, like 2-year-old kind of at the top of the stairs, losing his shit, like so happy Bubby's home. I was like,
Yeah.
this
This is what
is
Oprah for.
it.
That's it.
Your own personal inbound.
I was just like, he'd be screaming and so happy and so excited. It's like, oh, shit, man. Now I have to love this thing.
Yeah.
Like,
You don't have a choice.
and then your day is like, even if you had a bad day, that moment, yeah, vuya, like you're happy.
Yeah.
You have a person that wants to play with you. Like,
Mm.
Their day stopped and restarted when you came back.
100%. 100%. And I mean that's what kids are for. Like I believe. Like I actually literally my mind gets wiped clean the moment I see my kids. I forget everything. I could have come from a fight, an argument, a what, but if I just see any of my children, I'm like, and like none of it matters, man. They are really beautiful. So today's show is going to be really, really dope. I know that we've got the burning platform from 7 till 8. Pumi, you'll tell us a little bit later what that's going to be about. And then yeah, for the first hour we're going to be hanging out, of course, sharing some information about what's going on in the world. A lot is going on in the world, as always. We do live in South Africa. This is a Hollywood movie. Like it's real life, but it's a movie. So I will also keep you updated with the things that are happening in the country. But yeah, welcome to the show, man. Let's hang out. And it's Puza Thursday. I even forgot that it's Puza Thursday. People still say that like it's a thing, Puza Thursday, like Siapshaya today.
Well, according to
I
Michael
think
Flag,
the lockdown kind of
alcohol,
killed that.
we should quit alcohol, should quit smoking. Michael was on the ball yesterday.
Yeah,
I was
yesterday.
listening.
Yeah, yo,
Positive flags.
yeah, like no more drinking, no more smoking. Like even you must do yoga, you must do CrossFit, you must do what. It was very like pressurized, but I mean it's good for him. Congo Chris in the comments is saying Happy Puza Thursday. Happy Puza Thursday to you, Congo Chris. Like I'm saying, I completely Puza Thursday in my
You know,
heyday.
you
Yeah.
talk about the smoking and the drinking and some of the things. I am astounded
Mm.
at the rise or the takeover of vaping.
Yeah, we spoke about this on the
Mhm.
shows a little bit yesterday. It has literally taken over. It's a thing, and like it's across all ages. People are just vaping for fashion, for what. Like I don't think it has anything to do with like I used to smoke cigarettes and now I feel like am moving over. Some people are just doing it because So
And these are high school problems. I mean, I'd love to hear from some of the people at home who have
mm,
kids in high school what that is like. Because first time I then heard about how big vaping is and also
mm,
what a problem it is when Kaneko came home and said to me, Ma, the school has a problem with vaping, hey? With
Mm,
boys are caught smoking, boys are caught vaping. Like he's never once said boys have been caught smoking. Boys are caught vaping.
mm,
For
Okay.
me, this is probably the first interaction of vaping was in varsity. We're sitting in a lecture hall, and then there's just this white smoke just comes down. Like,
Hypo
Emma,
in the lecture hall.
yeah, in the lecture hall. And then I'm like, oh, okay, no, we just carried on. And then Amber's the only one just staring around. I'm like, hi, bro.
Is the
Like, is
room
this,
on fire?
yeah, what's happening? Like, but also it doesn't send out the smoke detectors. So it's allowed indoors. It's not offensive. It's like,
Hmm.
it's
but
a bit of nicotine.
I don't know,
It's
man. I don't
unregulated.
know. It's unregulated. You see, that's the thing. It's like nobody's actually like monitoring what's going on. And I don't really know how to use a vape. Like, do you pour things inside? Like you re-up the flavors? And like what if you're not pouring the right things in there? Like kids are creative. That's the thing here, especially high school kids. My sister-in-law is actually a teacher at a high school in Joburg. And you know that Zambak, the little green Zambak that we all grew up on, these
Yes.
kids, they open it and they take the seeds from marijuana. They put the seeds inside the zambak, and that's what they apply on their lips. According to them, it just has a longer lasting effect. I was flabbergasted. I'm like, okay, what is the logic behind this thing? Like, what were you guys thinking when you decided that this is what you're going to do? And this is just what we know. The things that we don't know that they're doing are a lot. So that's why I worry a bit about this vaping thing. Like, what's actually going on? But people that vape, they seem to love it. They seem to really enjoy it. It seems to be like their party trick. So I'm not going to take that away.
And the hubblies, and the hubblies. Like you see those people arriving at Groove with the huge bag. It's
Bag.
like,
Yeah.
it's just what is in the bag? It looks like a body bag. And,
Yeah, no.
and the hubblies, and the, it's
There's a big
amazing.
there's a big I guess a rumor about guys from the south. Apparently people from the south are like the capital of hubbly people. Like they know how to organize it. There's levels to hubbly. There's those little ones where you still pour like water and you get a little bit of coal. Then there's like electrical ones where you
Wait,
come
what?
through and then you just switch it on. It. Dude, there's levels. Ask anyone from the south about hubbly. They'll school you. There's like 6 pipes, 4 pipes, 8 pipes. I'm out here like, whoo, you guys are doing a lot. Hey, it's happening in the place to be.
The South.
Yeah, no, the South boys are in it to
South.
win it. They are on top of it. I saw a video of Hubly even at like some weddings yesterday. Like there was a bride sitting on her groom's lap, and like while the
Just
groom
like,
was smoking Hubly, guys, yo, it's
that's
a
So
real
there's a
thing.
smoke
lot more than just
never
Puza.
caught me. Yeah, Smokey was the one thing that never caught me.
And
Oh
like at
wow.
all,
At all. Like
good.
in like my roommate, we judged him for smoking. We were like 6 friends back at varsity. So now we judged him for smoking because he was the minority. He used to smoke every time he used to get stressed. That's what he used to say.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you get stressed every day. You smoke every day. And then this one time he wanted to buy a 20 pack. We're like, no. That you see now you're creating a habit. No. Look at the Lucy. He's like, no, guys, the Lucy's are expensive. It's like 3 rand a pop. I'm like, hey, dude. Hey,
You know,
you're
one
not
of the people we
going to the
have to
truth.
thank. Do you know
Mm,
that one of the people we have to thank for the fact that smoking is the way that it is now is Nkosazana Zuma? And
mm,
and the I mean, before all the regulations, smoking was a problem. People used to smoke in the plane. People used to smoke in the clubs, like
mm.
inside the club. You'd go home. Lebang, I had dreads once, like a little bit longer than the dreads you have, like
Yeah.
huge thick dreads. You'd go to club, and at the end of the night when you come home, your
It
dreads
smell like.
just smell like
Mm.
smoke.
Yeah.
It
Side note,
was,
can we please see a picture of that? Like that excites me. The thought of you with long, long dreadlocks. I want to see it. I just want to see it.
oh
For
my
me,
God,
it's
I
like
had to
Sis
know.
Pumi. Like, I can't imagine Sis Pumi looking like Gal Pumi.
You
Okay,
know, okay, Lucy, I actually
I
wanted to.
wasn't born this old.
Are you sure? Bakh'abantu seems to think that you were. I wanted to ask about this thing of him referring to you as Usis Pumi. I mean, like out of respect, I'm assuming that's why you do it. Like, it's just like Sis Mang Mang. And the other day you called me Sis Lebang. I was like, no, just call me Lebang, dog.
Yeah,
What
I
the hell?
read that. I
I
read
was
that.
like,
I
oh,
was like,
niggas
oh,
making me old. I was like, ooh. But I've also been in situations where I am either like moderating a conversation online, and there's like older black women in the panel, and before we go live, I always ask them, is it okay if I refer to you as Usis Banbani? And they're always like, not really, but if you'd like to, I mean, from a respect angle, I get it. And then like I kind of thought about it, like, are we just putting the CC in front of their names just as a respect thing, even if they like uncomfortable with it? Are we basically making people old when they're not? Because here's Pumi, who I'm like, oh hey Pumi, what's up? And you're like, yeah, boss, it's Pumi. I'm like, oh, okay.
It took me
Um,
a long time to get used to it. And now everybody, it was Sia who started it. And now
uh,
everybody, but Sia, when he started, was young. He was
yeah,
little,
it was
so
like
it wasn't so
beginning.
bad.
Mm.
It wasn't so bad, but I also was like, you don't have to. You can just call me
I
Pumi.
I
but you
actually ran into
but
this
I
problem.
think it's also the way that you're raised, right? Some
mm,
people, and I'm glad you asked, Lebang, because is it appropriate in professional situations?
mm,
Does it create a power dynamic that is not
exactly.
necessary in a work situation? So I'm
Mm.
just like, but so I take it now. Now it's like a brand. That's like a
I
brand name.
Yeah. And you're definitely not old. I mean, Unto, Dude 69, our fave,
Dude, 69.
in the comments is saying, Pumi, you're not old at all. No, you're a peach, baby. You still got it going on. And he's absolutely right. I feel like sometimes we add an extra 10 or 20 years onto people's actual age just by saying, see, mama.
But
Or
is that what it does? Yeah, it's also when
I
the
feel
the,
like
the
it
car
is.
cuts. Like Tracy says, if the friends call her Tani. That Tani is a thing, huh?
Yeah, no, that is a
But
thing.
for me, it's like I want to say it it's a prefix.
Okay,
Miss Leba.
Mm.
I'm
sure.
referring to you as a lady. I'm showing respect, like Miss Lebang, like female Lebang, male
I get
Carrie.
that.
Yeah, like, just how we were raised. I don't know.
Mm.
I
No,
refer to everyone as ma'am and sir. I think
mm.
Gareth hated that the first time I called him sir.
Of course he would. Mash Machine in the comments is saying, look, it's all about respect. Even in the workplace, when I started working, it was very weird calling the elders by their first name. And that's something that a lot of people, I guess, have to deal with when they are working maybe in like managerial positions, and the people that are in maybe other positions are actually older than them. Depending on how you're raised, you may have a little bit of conflict with regards to how you deal with that. I mean, if you are the leader of a team of 6 people and 5 of them are older than you, are you going to sit there and be like, yo, what up, peeps? You
Back to
know?
the power dynamics, as Bruno's
Mm.
mentioned. It
Exactly.
creates an
Exactly.
unnecessary power dynamic where you can't reprimand your elder because you already
Exactly.
gave away your power.
Well, here's another thing that'll blow your mind, Bakh'abantu. But there was a time when I was one of the youngest people in the boardrooms. It'll blow
When
your
was that?
mind. I know you can't imagine the
Ago.
dinosaurs I used to work with. But and for me it was in the boardrooms, because I know that the people around, so all the old white guys don't know that you're supposed to refer to them as like abuti or dade, or
Mm,
babusman
mm,
badi. So that wasn't a problem. But I also didn't have a problem with walking into the kitchen and speaking with the ladies in the kitchen and referring to them as sis banban. That
mm,
didn't it wasn't a
mm.
problem for me.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of people actually have to deal with this. In the comments, ooh, happiness is saying, I actually have this problem in the workplace, and even in Australia, the older black ladies want to be called auntie, and it's not part of white culture at all, especially in a professional setting. Can you imagine how awkward that must be? She's just made you tea, and now she's looking at you like, say something, say it, and you're like,
But if
say
a
what?
person tells you that, if a person tells you, if they tell you that that's what they prefer to be referred to as, then it's not a
Mm,
problem. It's like whether you're black or white. If a person says to you they'd rather be called Auntie Nell,
yeah.
just call them Auntie Nell. That's what they want.
Ukambamba Chanda is saying it's not appropriate in a work situation at all. I kind of disagree with that, that it's not appropriate. I think, as long as a person has stated their preference, then you guys dictate whether it's appropriate or not. But just to like sort of put a blanket, term and say, well, it shouldn't happen at all, is that's when it becomes problematic. So, for example, if happiness in Australia is unfamiliar with it, it'll seem inappropriate because it is deemed inappropriate. But the auntie has said, "Yo, just call me auntie, bro.
Call me auntie, yo.
I'm your auntie. That's me. I've got your back. I'm putting 2 sugars in your tea, bro. I got you." And that's ultimately what it is. I don't think it should be anything bigger or smaller than that. B in the comments is also saying something. She says, if
Oh,
car god calls me Cece instead of mummy, I'll give $100. I can't deal with the mummy. Yo, $100?
but
Okay.
I get B. I get you, B. I
Mm,
get you.
yeah.
I remember the kind of recoil and shock of, the guys that sell fruits at the traffic light or whatever. Well, the
Yes.
first one that said Dimamzo, I had a moment.
Did it
I
happen?
had
You
a,
crossed
I had a moment. I was like, me,
Me.
Dimamzo. And
like, did
that's
you
who I
say
am
me?
now. So B, I got you, girl. I got you. I get that. It's a thing.
Yeah, it is a thing. I knew that I'd crossed over the day somebody referred to me as Grootman, and this was publicly. It wasn't even just me and this person. It was live on Twitter. Hi, Grootman Lebang. I was like, yeah, it's over. It's
Ew.
done. It's done.
What?
Yo,
Why? Because of your deep voice.
I don't know. I'm like, I'm definitely like 31. How am I a Grootman? And then I realized I'm actually tweeting amongst children. Like, these are kids. So for them, I am old. Do you know what I mean? And for me, I'm like, I'm definitely not old. Like, when I think Grootman, I think of what auntie, what malume, like really the elders.
Yeah,
From my
Mokaba.
generation, Mokaba, Bourgeois, whatever the case is. But like for
And
them,
that little, like fleshy bit here at the back of the head, like that. So when I hear Grootman, I think of
hmm,
that piece of like meat.
Moriri. Oh, that
Remember?
meat. Yes. The one with the rolls. Now I relate. Now I relate. I was like, what is this poopy talking about? Also, on a more unhygienic note, that
Oh
pinky finger
no.
that's very, very long, unnecessarily long, that nobody knows why. Why is it that long?
Again, another Joburg thing. I came up to Joburg and I'm like, why does everyone have this long nail? I didn't understand it.
Bro,
It's not where I come from. It's not a thing.
I don't get it.
I don't. I don't. It's a gang side, I guess.
Mash is saying something we're all thinking deep down. Yo, B, which spa do you go to? Because I'll be your car guard for 100 Rand each time you come through. I second that. Like, that was my first takeaway. Like, 100 bucks,
$100. Just to
bruh,
not call you
just to
mama.
not call you mama.
Nah,
B, come through, girl.
deal taken.
Come through. Like, yeah, no, but let's not hop on because we can go
So
on forever.
Labang, you talk about that like long pinky nail, and this
Yes.
is this is your opportunity to have your wife chat. There's that one character who
Mm.
is, I don't know, the one brother who
With
is
the
so,
cold.
yeah, Abdul. His name is Abdul. His real name is Abdul, and I forget what
Mm.
his character name is. But he's that guy with the pinky,
Yes.
with the
Gold
Pringle
chains.
diamond jerseys and the Pringle.
Yes.
And he embodies that character so much. Every time I see him, I'm just like, I know this guy. I see this
Mm.
guy at the taxi rank. I've seen this
Yeah.
guy.
You
And
definitely
B
have.
It's a
and
trend.
Noort.
Ungoba. I think his name is Ungoba, right? So, yeah, I think it's Ungoba. He's the epitome of that Malume. He owns a tavern, so he's got 24-hour access to alcohol. He doesn't even have to pay for it over the counter anymore. He has this gold chain where, like, the shirt is always unbuttoned. It's never buttoned to the top. You always seeing these bones inside. Like, you're not seeing like a bulky, a fit in the gym type of guy.
Man
It's just
cleavage.
bones. It's just bones, and then maybe some chest hairs, and then there's the pinky finger, and it is long. Ooh, it is long.
And
And
he always has that comb for his beard.
always, just this is like him. He really, really like bodied that character. I actually saw Bakh'abantu with a comb in his head this morning. I had a couple of questions. Oh, there it is. Wow. I wanted to ask, but I was like, hey, to each their
Let it
own.
be. Let it
Let it
be.
be.
Let it be.
Free.
So, Pumi,
Indeed.
what's your gripe with the wife? Like, let's just settle the score once and for all. Because I remember last time I wanted to speak about it, but you were like, "We're not gonna talk about it at all." No, Lebang. I was like, "Okay, yes, sis Pumi." So now I'd like to know, like, what happened.
Have you what? Do you watch it?
I've watched enough of it. Like I stopped these past 3 or 4 weeks. I haven't because after that first sex scene with Kanye Bao, I got completely put off. I won't lie. I haven't watched since then.
Okay, I haven't seen that. Um, have
Don't.
you read the books?
I haven't read the books.
Okay. So the books are an incredibly fascinating insight into a world that is so different from
Mm,
what most of us kind of experience, right? Because the guys are like taxi owners and this girl is a little journalist and in a particular, and then she falls in love with this guy and becomes the center of their universe. That's why it's called the wife, right?
yeah.
She kind of pulls the family. They were very close, they were always very close, but
Mm,
she creates a home for this family, and kind of, and you are in their trials and tribulations as they grow, as they learn, as they recalibrate, but she's
okay.
always the central character. She's
Mm,
and as it grows, there are more wives that come on, but it's a story that's driven by a really strong, confident woman who walks into a very unfamiliar environment and
mm,
kind of brings the best out of all these guys, and but also has to deal with the uncomfortable parts of the life, deals with the uncomfortable parts of, with their thugs,
the
they
violence.
are, they're
Mm,
dangerous, they are violent, they are all
mm,
of those things.
mm,
um and it's a complex story, but it's also got rounded characters. And what happened with the TV show, and yeah, they did say it was inspired by, so we don't
yeah.
expect it to be exactly, so we don't
Exactly.
expect it to be a Godfather experience, right? Where
Yeah.
you read the book and you watch the movie and there's a right, so we get that.
Yeah.
But and the actors are brilliant on this show. They have got
Mm.
all,
Oh,
and
it's so
for
good.
those of you who haven't watched in any of these episodes, I highly recommend that you watch even from season one.
Yeah.
If you're a reader, read the books, get the books. They're written by a South African woman, and they are a South African tapestry, right?
Mm,
And they
mm,
just, in the translation to screen, they lost all that. They've made Shomu the central wife. She's like this naff person, and the whole thing is now centered around the thuggish nature of these boys and their fight with the other family, and it's lost the essence of what it was about.
Cool. A lot of people agree with you, and a lot of people have said the same thing, and quite openly. Even some of the actors themselves have said, "Look, we're acting,
Just doing
but
a job.
we're just doing a job." But the book is obviously, it allows you to create this world, and because of the pace of the book, it's a book, so it can really unpack every single little situation. Are we not being a little bit hard on them?
That's
Um,
what
No,
I was gonna say, Laban.
no,
yeah.
Though there is an
no.
argument for being hard, Sis Bumi,
Mm,
because if you look at it, the book transports you to that world.
yeah.
You enter that world with Uhlomu. She's your surrogate. You walk the story with her as she
Mm,
uncovers the world, as she experiences the fairy tale, as she experiences the bad side. She's your avatar through that world.
mm.
So that's what the book does. I only read the first one, Uhlomu. So like I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is what is. But the minute you translate it to screen,
Mm,
it doesn't translate because all of a sudden your imagination can't fill in the blanks
exactly.
and nothing can
And
ever beat your imagination.
no, I absolutely disagree with you. I absolutely disagree with you because it's been done before. Okay. With short stories to full
Mm,
length films where the essence and the translation is seamless, and we get it, right? I mean, we're all visually literate individuals. We
mm,
understand how the cinematic world works versus the literature world, right? So we're not, that's not the thing. It is simply the fact that what was lost in translation is the actual essence of what this thing is about. The script is bad. The script is bad.
That's what
The
mm,
actors are amazing. They
they
are putting
cast them
heart and
so well.
soul in that thing. They're putting their heart and bloody soul in that thing. Um, but it's just, and the thing also, I think, for a lot of people that pissed off a lot of people about it is, what's up with this flattened view of who we're supposed to consume, right? So now all that the wife has become is, it's become a version of the
Snatch.
throne,
Mm,
the river, it's all the same. Like, why don't they feel we should have variety of character and story? And South Africa's so rich. When I watch on GateNet, right, and you see the diversity of shows, and what's that face?
Take that drop.
cake
We,
nets.
yeah.
No, no. For me, no.
Guy,
For you, yes. For you, yes.
they've
Do you
got,
think so?
but they have got a breadth of characters and
Mm,
parts of life that people are living. Why can't we have the same thing on Zanzi Magic?
mm. No, we're learning. Look,
Why?
we'll get there. We'll get. I'll be honest.
Suga.
Listen, it's been a while since we've seen something as refreshing as The Wife. Look, if you compare it to the book, of course, it's a hard no. But in terms of like the visual, what can I say? The je ne sais quoi. We always getting the river, the generations, the what, the nyue, nyue. This was actually refreshing. It was a new take for me on the things of South Africa. We're seeing what it is like to be a taxi owner and the realities of it. Sure, it's a story, but I think they did something. They didn't do all the things, but they did something that I think we're ready for. We're ready to see a different type of story. We tired of kind of seeing, oh, this is what black people go through. Oh no, they're all poor. Like, they showed us something completely different, and I think it's the right time for it. And sure, everybody that's read the book is saying the same thing, that it was trash. I mean, but when I saw Kanye Bao's nipple for the fourth time, that's when I stopped watching. I was like, I am enough.
Too much nipple.
It was just too much nipple going on for me. Season one showed me very little nipple. I could watch it with my partner. I could watch it with my mama. I was happy. And then in season two, I was like, yo, that nipple is pink, bro. It's like a bright pink. Anyway, yeah, like
Y'all watch Game of Thrones. Y'all watch Game of Thrones.
I make this
Y'all watch
argument all the
HBO.
time.
Yes.
Game of
HBO.
Thrones season 1 is unwatchable.
But they were quite clear from the beginning. Like, it didn't come out of nowhere. I feel like it was like, okay, cool. This is what it's
yeah,
gonna be.
okay, granted, the first episode does end with a rape scene, but like it's so graphic.
It is extremely graphic.
Season 1 is unbearable.
Yes, but they also set us up for that. They don't surprise us at the end and say, nip slip. No, they pretty clear about the type of show that they are.
I think you brought this up, Labang. But if you bring in Kanye Bao, I would also nip slip her 4 times a week if I could.
Sex
Because
sells, man.
yeah, it sells.
Mm.
It's what I'm sure, like some guy is sitting in the thing calculating, so many people click.
Oh,
We're talking
here's
about it.
somebody that loves the show. Cindy Siwa says last week's episodes were amazing.
Okay.
We're
How-
actually
Okay,
amazing.
I have
Okay.
I have made a mental note that I am going, because I haven't seen any of season 2, that I'm
Mm.
actually going to make time. I'm going to sit down and watch the episodes that I have missed. Because also, right, unfortunately, I'm a slut for that, right? I just want to support the local stuff. You want to support them. You want to
100%.
support them
Yes.
with the viewership so that they
Yes.
do get more opportunities to create
Mm.
more work, and
Yes.
and but then they must still get rebuked every now and again for,
Every
like,
now and then. Okay. Well, if you are interested in checking out the books, they are by Tutu Busani Dube, and it's the the Wife book series. There's about 5 of them. Oh, that's cool. Simpiwe was actually
and
kind
she's
enough.
working on a new one.
Is it? Tata girl, she's working. That's dope. You see, I'm like you, sis Pumi, in the sense of like I want to support so bad that even if it's like bad, dog, I'll still support you. You know what I mean? Like, because I know what you're trying to do, and you're trying. The point is you're trying. Like, I support everything that is like brown and like proudly brown. Like, that's me. Anyway, 6:30. It's time to get into the headlines. And I'm gonna go through every single one of them because Upumi has made it clear that if I do not, then yeah, I will be in the dog box. Okay, so I'll kickstart with something that's happening
Before
locally.
you start with the headlines, I do want to challenge some of our. I want to challenge some of our listeners who haven't seen it, who haven't read the book, and preferably like people from outside the cultures, right? If you,
Mm,
I would love to hear their perspective. Please just watch a couple of the episodes in season one. You don't have to watch the whole thing. I'd love to hear their perspective. You know, what they think, like of the story, of the acting,
mm,
of
mm.
everything.
I'll also give it a try.
Challenge.
I watch Sex in Afrikaans. I can't get worse than that.
If you want sex in Afrikaans, then you can definitely stomach the wife. You can absolutely
Can't
stomach
get
it.
worse than that.
Okay, cool. So let's kickstart with some local news. The opposition parties are blaming Home Affairs for the rise of xenophobia. So you should know by now that Operation is it Dubula?
Dudula.
Dudula, yes.
Dudula.
Yes, Operation Tutula has just been like on the rise. It's really every other day there's a new story about it. But it seems as though the opposition parties are blaming the governing ANC, particularly the fumbling Department of Home Affairs, for the recent rise of xenophobia in the country, which is exemplified by groups like Operation Tutula. So the National Embassy debated human rights on Tuesday. They say that we want to send a very strong message to politicians who fan the flames of xenophobia that they will be held accountable should the fire get out of control. And this is according to the DAMP Angel Kanyile. She said that if the Department of Home Affairs did its work, groups like Operation Dudula wouldn't exist. So basically, if y'all were just doing your 9 to 5s, Home Affairs, if you didn't make us wait in long lines, Home Affairs, if your system wasn't down all the time, Home Affairs, then these things wouldn't be happening. So it is a very touchy subject. It is causing quite a lot of hoo-ha, and I don't want to comment too much on it. I know Usis Pumi will take the reins when it comes to this, but if you have been following what's been going on in the streets, then yeah, it's very, very sad. It's very, very deep. A lot of people's lives are sort of just being uprooted. A lot of people are getting hurt. In fact, one of our employees, Eclipse Central, Sis Jane, lives in the hub of Alex. Every time she comes to the office, she's got a different story about, oh, the cops did
It's
this. The cops.
harrowing.
It is, oh, to say
It's
the least.
harrowing, and it's worrying because these things turn like the wind. They
Yeah,
turn like the wind. Today, the fight might be with Zimbabweans or Nigerians or what, and just like that, the fight
mm,
is suddenly, why are the Tswanas here? Why are the Sutus here? Why are the Zulus here? Why?
mm,
Because it. But I think it's a little simplistic to say it's the fault of Home Affairs. I think it's a systemic problem.
I also think so.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
a
Very
systemic problem. You know, there's a problem of a porous border. There's a problem of not processing documentation in time. There's a huge problem with the way African leaders hold each other accountable too, right?
100%.
Zimbabwe, and this is us reaping the rewards of the quiet diplomacy
Mm,
of,
mm,
with Zimbabwe's political situation and the sanctions that they were put under, and this is what we have now. So
yeah.
I think it's a
It's
little
some of the consequences of
rich.
all of that. No, we can't pin this on only Home
home.
Affairs. That's silly. Maybe they are part of it, but there's only so much that they can do as well. Yeah, there was this time when I actually went to get a birth certificate for my daughter, and the lady next to me in the line was she was Zimbabwean, and like the uphill that she had to go through to get anything from those people was insane. They kept turning her back. So on one end, it was like, okay, cool, you guys are doing your job because her passport had expired or whatever. But I promise you, by the end of the day, she walked out with
Yeah,
something.
there's a negative incentive feedback mechanism that encourages you to go the illegal route. It's like in
Sadly,
Joburg, everyone I've met, oh, you have to buy your license.
Yeah.
So it's that you have to do the
Please
illegal thing.
don't. Please don't buy your license.
You can't say that to Sis Pumi, bro. She'll definitely call you out.
Please don't buy your license.
Been driving for 6 years, this for me.
He's
Got
been
to
There's
make
a
driving
mistakes.
dirty.
there is a horrendous story. There is a horrendous story, and I think it happened somewhere in America of a girl that got stopped by
21
a
year old.
cop, and then he got
She
called
was
away
drunk.
to something else, and she was
Mm,
drunk. And then she tweets about it, how she got away with it, in her drunk driving, and
mm.
literally like 30 minutes
5
later or something, she
later.
plows
Yeah.
into the same cop and the people that he was called away to help. 3 people dead. 21-year-old. Just don't do it.
Over some tweets. And like a week before that, she was tweeting that she's drunk. Before that, she tweeted that she's the best drunk driver ever. So I think, ooh, Pumi is absolutely right, dude. Maybe don't.
Just do the right thing.
I mean, it'll
So
take
in
you
the
longer
same way,
for sure.
it,
But
in the same way that we complain about politicians and servants who are not doing the right thing, you are part of the problem when
mm.
you don't do the right thing.
Yeah, we've been schooled. Okay, cool. In other headlines this morning, e-hailing drivers are demanding a 50 rand base fare, and they're saying that operators need to stop determining the prices. Okay, this is interesting. So I think there was a strike which started on Tuesday this week, where e-hailers were demanding that the Department of Trade, Industry, and Competition regulate the companies that operate in the space to stop this practice of determining prices on behalf of the operators. And this was just one of the demands listed in the memorandum by the Unity in Diversity, which is a group representing the drivers who work for Uber, Bolt, Didi, as well as InDriver. And yeah, it's apparently this very same memorandum has like a bunch of grievances that were supposed to be handed to officials on Tuesday, but that didn't happen because the person who was supposed to receive it at the union buildings in Pretoria had knocked off when they got there. So yeah, this is classic South Africa. I mean, on one end, I get what the e-hailing service guys are saying, but at the same time, it's like, yo, guys, can I just call an Uber and it arrives, and can I just go?
That's
Like,
where I am,
yo,
man. That's where I am because I don't understand. I don't understand because I'm on Uber for the low prices. I'm on Uber for this. I could
mm,
take a cab, I could walk, but I'm
mm,
on Uber because Uber gives me promos. But you get a driver that's angry about the promo. I understand, but
mm.
I don't know. Like, get off the platform if you're unsatisfied with Uber.
Rem-
Is that a bit harsh?
remember that most of these Uber and Bolt drivers, they come from a time of maxi taxi. Well, some of them. So back then, there was no regulating of how much they charge. They just pick a number, and if they say 200, you'll give it to them. And now they are being regulated not by even like the government, but like someone in an office in America. So for them, they can't control that, and it kind of it adds even more anger and
But
like
that's what you signed up for. You're an independent contractor. You're not an employee. You signed up for Uber. No one forced you. No
they
one advertised this.
mm,
You downloaded the app. They allow you to work another job.
yeah, they
So
want more
And
money.
and
they allow you to have more.
and have you had the experience? You use Bakh'abantu, you use Uber? Because I've seen a lot of people complaining about not being able to get short rides, so short trips,
Mm.
because
No,
the
they
money is so
really
little for a short trip. So
Like
more
30
and more
bucks.
of the operators then don't take your car.
and Uber drivers once gave me like a backstage look at the thing. He said he hates people that have promos, so he's gonna downrate you because they find out when they click and trip that, oh, this 100 rand is actually a promo, and then I'm only getting 30 rands from driving you from Soweto to Joburg, which is kind of unfair because
Oh,
that's not what he also signed up for. And
yeah.
then you also get the like izinto like by what do you call, like the Uber drivers that don't take trips, don't take cash trips, they don't take
Mm,
short trips. If you but like I don't think they can see but I think they started innovating that at first you couldn't see the destination, so you just accepted when you saw Sispum was
yeah.
requesting an Uber, you just accepted. But now I think they can see the destination and they kind of gauge where, oh, okay, no, like locally in Brahm, everyone is Ubering locally. But like
Mm,
then if you're more incentivized to take up airport trips
of
because you
course.
understand everyone coming from the airport is going far.
Of course. So they've got a couple of demands on this list. Obviously, the base fare should be 50 bucks. They're asking that the rate per kilometer should be a minimum of 13 Rand and dynamic pricing should kick in above and not fall below the minimum rate per kilometer. They're demanding that all e-hailing companies' commission should be revised downwards from 25% and 26% to 10% and should be clearly displayed. Oof. And then lastly, all companies should introduce cancellation fees on both card and cash payments. Whoa, 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 guys.
Getting
Whoa.
personal now.
It's yeah, no, I think, just drive me to where I need to be, and like let's just cap it at that. I
If
do
you think Uber's unfair, go start your own Uber or go do
mm,
something similar or do it, go out on your own.
I completely agree with you, B. I agree with you. And there's other cities where in jail, like Ubers are not even just Uber, but like Ubers, what, they just nonsense. Rebellious Ruth is saying if people start talking to the taxi owners to revolt and stand up, everyone needs a lesson in basic economics. If our government and country worked, we'd have investment. Oil has now become $120. Yeah, bo? Yeah, bo? So it is what it is. Cindy Siwe in the comments is saying they absolutely hate card payments, short trips, and promos in Durban. I've heard a lot about the Ubers and Bolts in Durban. Apparently, it's nonsense. Like as soon as you come there, they actually send you a message saying, "Is this a card payment?" If you
Uphethe
say yes,
imali.
exactly, they won't accept card payments if they want hard cash so that they can dictate.
How
Um,
much?
yeah, no, it's hectic. And Moonchild in the comments is saying that, oh my god, I'll have to stop using Uber services if these regulations are implemented. We might all have
Also,
to.
here's the question: if we're regulating stuff, can we regulate the abuse that women suffer on Ubers?
Let's
Can we
start
get
there.
start there?
Let us start at the fact that every week there's a different case about a girl getting raped from either Uber Bolt, someone getting kidnapped in an Uber Bolt. Let's start at the beginning and at the fact that it's so easy to sort of apply onto Uber and become a driver where the face doesn't match the ID or the driver.
What's,
Like,
have you seen Uber Eats? You see the picture of a scooter and then a car rocks up, or you see a picture of a car and a number plate, and then the guy's like, "I have your food up." Do I trust that food?
that's better. Sometimes they've found your burger. They've taken a bite of your burger, put it back into the box, and you were now they've just given you a packet, and you must just go on with your life when someone has bitten into your burger. Apparently,
I
Bolt also has
I
a
saw
Bolt
a
Eat.
tweet like that. I saw a tweet like that. Malume bega yakho. And I was like, what?
Dude, it's wild. Oh, are we living
I
in the
have
wild
had
world?
an experience though, and I didn't know if it was a problem where I like ordered Uber Eats or chicken wings or whatever. And when they arrived, they were like two less than what I had ordered. So I wondered if this was a problem at the shop
Mm.
or it was a problem in transit. I was like, but it definitely was a bit of a,
It's a
did
problem.
I just
It's a
get taken?
they get hungry too, dog. They get hungry too, and they're not shy. They're absolutely not shy. These days more than ever. Like I'd never, if maybe if I was possessed, but to order like Bolt foods, it just sounds like a scam. It just sounds like they're gonna come there with half a pizza. It just, no, no, I can't.
They'll come there with half a
Bolt
pizza.
foods, Bolt. You're gonna trust that?
At least it's like someone gay. Like they thought about you.
What?
They're
So
like,
they left me
But
half
we
of the
always trusted Mr. Delivery. We always trusted Mr. Delivery.
Yeah, Mr. Delivery. But the thing is, Mr. Delivery crawled so that Uber Eats can fly. Like I think they were too slow in their digital, transformation, and they kind of got comfortable because they had monopolized the entire market. Like Mr. Delivery was that guy on the fridge. There was a magnet with the menu on the fridge for years and years, and then suddenly there were
boom.
options. But they still in the cut. They definitely they're still around. Let's see what else is happening in the news because every time we talk about food on the show, hey, the hunger just just kicks in. As always, Fikile Mbalula is entertaining us. He has revealed that Prasa has been scammed. I put that in inverted commas by 3,000 ghost workers. He says that the agency discovered this through its operation called Ziveze last December, and Prasa has since halted their salaries, but no one has come forward to say they haven't been paid. So Mbalula was answering questions before the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, and he said, "Look, the 3,000 that have been found." It's part of an ongoing process in what Plus has called Ziveza. And that operation has proven by last December that 3,000 people who have been paid and since December their salaries have been stopped. None of those people have come forward to claim they haven't been paid or they've been paid unfairly, meaning that it's a system of corruption within human resources. Dude, a ghost employee?
This is a
What?
problem in almost all the government departments. But
What?
the thing that I found very fascinating and that nobody at Scopa asked him this is now that they've got these 3,000 people identified, right? They've
Mhm.
identified them through a name that's linked to a bank account.
Count.
Mm.
They actually now have evidence that they can take to the banks to get the details of that person because what? Everybody does FICA,
And go
right?
after the money. And go
So
Yeah.
after the
there's
money.
like, no, no, and go after the people. So the people receiving the salaries have defrauded
The
PRASA
state.
for
100%.
however long. And so those people must be arrested. There is evidence of the fraud. So there's no investigation, further investigation that needs to be done. And those people can then give up the people within the organization who have allowed them to perpetrate this fraud. But
But
But the people have the secrets.
this is South Africa.
Prasa or Sportnet or Transnet when I grew up. It was Transnet when I grew up. It became Prasa somewhere down the line. Or
no, man,
Sportnet.
PRASA still exists. PRASA exists, and
Prasa
Transnet still exists, and
South Africa.
Transnet.
Transnet. Oh, but
Spornet.
I remember looking into Sportnet and Transnet, and there was this white guy. I think it was a docu or something that I watched. This white guy goes on about he had a job where he was shuffling the coal or like running the locomotive or whatever.
Mm.
And then when freedom came, he got four other employees that were working with him.
Mm.
So all of a sudden, his job is minute. Like he's not doing anything because there's four of us. The accountability gets lost, and then also we're paying people just to sit around because it really did need one person.
Mm.
So now it's these ghost employees thing. I think it stems from there where people just got paid to sit around, and then people just like, let me just stop. Let me stop getting the people. Let me just get the money instead.
Look, as long as people
So
get
DK
arrested.
says, yeah, well, DK is saying that those names are just cannon fodder, right? And I get that. I absolutely get that.
Yeah.
But when faced with actual real jail time, you're going to give them up. You're totally going to be, hey, you know what? Lebang at the HR department is the one that
Mm.
organized this whole thing for me. But there's no will.
Nobody likes a
There's
snitch.
No
no,
political.
yo, that's in the movies. Snitches getting stitches is in the movies.
Yeah, in
Out
real
here in
life.
real life,
Stitches get paid.
Yeah, no, like let's hope that happens. But yeah, it is what it is. I think, as I
I'm
said,
not
this country,
holding my breath.
it's a movie, dog. Like you know how it goes. Yeah. Okay, let's go overseas to see what's happening there. It seems like Tesla's market value is back above 1 trillion as a new Berlin plant opens. You know, Elon Musk, I am constantly entertained by this man on Twitter. So after almost 19 years after its founding, Tesla has a car factory network that spans the globe. The leading electric vehicle maker officially opened its plant outside Berlin on Tuesday, handing over the first 30 model YS to customers in front of the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Chief Executive Officer Elon Musk followed through on his promise to dance as he did when Tesla opened in Shanghai factory 2 years ago. Okay, so every time Elon dances, that's just more money for him. Good for them, man. I mean,
As the world is complaining about the markets and everything, Tesla's just shooting up because what? Guess
dude,
what? They don't depend on oil.
they don't. They just out here, just like turn.
Everyone is complaining about market cap. My company is losing money, and then Tesla is like posting high records.
Not good for them. Plus, he was born in South Africa, right? He's like a, a
Ah,
Pretoria boy.
we like claiming
Eh,
Elon. We like claiming
where's the
Elon.
lie? Where's the lie? Are we lying though?
I don't know.
There's
He
something in the.
hated. There's an article about Elon. He wanted to stop getting the newsletters from your alma mater, so like from your high school,
Yeah.
getting all those newsletters. But please donate, please support all boys Pretoria. He's like, if you guys stop sending me these emails, I will give you 20 million rand right now.
But he got
And he did.
bullied. He got bullied there.
Yeah,
They
he
did him
hates it.
dirty. Yeah.
Yeah, he hates
Nah,
Pretoria boys.
they did Elon Musk dirty like back in the day. He was bullied, so I'd completely understand. But good for him. And if I could afford a Tesla, I would probably definitely give
Cape
it a
Town was
try.
supposed to get Teslas. I don't know what happened there. We were also supposed to get an Amazon factory. We know what happened there.
Yeah, this is South Africa. Okay, final news story for the morning. You can actually watch two NASA astronauts spacewalk outside the International Space Station if you're interested. That's happening today. So NASA's going to be live, where two astronauts will conduct a spacewalk just outside the International Space Station today. Yeah, and you can obviously watch this off-world action live from your computer. NASA's Raja Chari and Matthias Mora of the European Space Agency are scheduled to step outside the orbiting lab today for a 6.5 hour spacewalk. That sounds interesting.
So before we close the headlines, I'm going to give you two new headlines
Please do, Sis Boom. Let's hear it.
that are important, right? Do you ever spend a day without using a GIF or a meme?
No, I use it like almost every hour.
Right? So this news headline is an important one because the man who actually invented GIFs
Yeah.
passed away yesterday.
Oh,
He had
Oh no.
COVID. After 2 weeks, he had COVID. His name is Steve Wilhite, right? And he created, do you know what GIF stands for?
no.
No.
No?
Fascinating.
It's one of those things we just
Like,
use.
Graphic,
We
it's
understand
an
what it is.
acronym,
Yeah.
Graphic
oh,
Interchange Format, right?
Oh,
Which is like big news,
oh,
right? The man like changed the world.
he
So
really
on
well.
the one side you've got Tesla, but and I don't think his death should go unannounced because we
Mm,
use his invention every
we do.
day
We
to
really
to
do.
to kind of to embody the emotions we feel.
Yes.
And when we
Yes.
don't have words, when you don't have words, you use a GIF.
Use a GIF. Or sometimes you just choose a GIF because it's like more entertaining. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you for the gifts. Definitely. He did a thing. He did a thing. He really did a thing.
You see, Dean Kabasa says he chats in GIFs.
Yeah. It's
there
what
was
we
a
do.
big argument on Twitter how to pronounce GIF. Is it GIF or GIF? And
Oh
he
yeah.
actually came in
Set the
through.
record straight,
Yeah, he
yeah.
said it's GIF, but people call it GIF, so I guess that's what
Aye.
it's called.
Good GIF. Good GIF.
It's like when memes hit South Africa, they're like memes. I'm
Oh,
like,
the memes.
the memes, no, it's memes.
It memes, Karen.
And then the second news, which is also the sad news of the passing, and this I saw in the middle of the night when I woke up. Madeleine Albright, who was the first female Secretary of State in the US, passed away. She had a battle with cancer and she passed away last night. Last night for us, or early morning for us. That's
Mm,
also, sad news. But a person who had quite an influence, and I'm always fascinated to see when people pass away who have such prominent positions. And her job, I mean, she was also the UN, she was also the ambassador to the UN for the US for a long time.
yeah.
And to see on the one side people applauding her for all of the stuff that she did and was able to do, and then on the other side the people who are like ready to cancel her entire existence for
Mm,
for their kind of righteous indignation of all sorts of other things that that the US, essentially, that the US is responsible for some atrocities and wars, and her response to those things. So read it up. Very fascinating.
Coming in with the
But
obituaries.
dude. Like,
yeah,
and
but
she came
these are
timed it
important
well.
notes.
It is like
These are important
at
notes.
the end we come through with the sad news. But these are things we need to know ultimately. So thank you for sharing that, Pumi. Can you tell us before we go what can we expect on the burning platform today?
Oh, the burning platform. So the world is burning, guys. The world is burning, and the world is always burning. South Africa is incredibly intense right now. But we have got, so Leeto's joining us. He is a favorite. Everybody knows who Leeto is. And we've also got Khaya Sithole, who is a well known kind of political commentator. He is very funny. He's a humorist. He's got a big personality on Twitter as well. And he's coming through to help us kind of figure it all out,
I've met Kaya
kind of
once.
figure out our place in this burning world.
Yeah. Now Kaya's dope. I'm also I'm
I've met him. He was my lecturer at Wits.
Oh, really?
oh,
Yeah, I've met him. So he's got a very out there take. He's very humorous. It's very offensive to some people, but I guess it's one of those like, open your mind. He's a
And
provocateur.
he's one of those people that they call polymaths, right? He has got an incredibly varied interest in everything from the political to the social to the economic. So he's got we've had him on the show before. Gareth and I have had him on the show before, and he's joining us today to share. And the two things that for me are top of mind, I'm always talking about we've all got to do something, try and do something with the little we have in the spaces that we are in to impact the world. And he has a very fascinating project that he's been running for a number of years now that he's going to tell us about. And then we're going to unpack what the world is.
Oh, okay, cool. So that's the Burning Platform from 7 till 8. So you just make sure that you don't go anywhere. So Tumi always brings the right kind of energy. The right kind of energy. In fact, while I have you here, I actually wanted to get Untitled Lux. I really would like for you to speak to him. I just want you to pick his brain. Like, would you be interested in something like that? Like, I know now everybody's like having him on their shows, whatever. But like, I think 3-4 weeks ago, I said to Dory, I'm like, Dory, let's get Untitled and put me in the same room. It'll be fire, literally. So think about it. Don't answer now.
That love sounds evil.
Right? It's like,
Being ready.
yeah, this is her.
Just being ready.
So think about it. If you're down, then let's make it happen. B, I know that you have a story on your mind about some unclaimed monies that are in the ether, which somebody needs to go and collect. Is it you? Just tell us. This is a safe space. Are you the guy?
I wish it was me, but I heard you guys talk about the lotto. Then the story just pops up because like Google listens to everything you guys talk about.
Yeah.
And then apparently some guy won money, or girl won money last year.
A person.
A person or a not person,
Session.
a non-binary cisgender individual. But yeah, like they won money and then they never collected. I don't know if they lost their ticket or what, but they never collected. Imagine winning 20 million rand. That could be life-changing.
Yo, 20 mil though.
And
That's
in
just
Tuba, the people who
That's
run
an episode of I Blew It loading right there.
Bruh. Well, if he or she or they go to collect, then definitely. Because already, like, you've won the money, you haven't gone to collect.
You're already displaying all the right traits.
Millionaire, but you don't have the ticket to prove it.
Yeah, that would suck.
I would eat at you.
But look, if you are listening, winner of this 20 million, we encourage you to go and collect your monies.
Please,
and then you can just give us like 2%. Just 2%.
Word of mouth spread to you.
You know, like we're making this happen for you as the Gareth Cliff Show. Look at us. Look at us just helping you. So go collect your money. So we can also...
of us.
You know, we care so much. Okay, cool. It is 7:00, which means we're gonna go into a break now, and then on the other side of the top of the hour, Pumi is gonna be handling the Burning Platform with her lovely guest. Lita's already in the background, which is exciting. Which means today's show is gonna be straight up fire. Thank you, B, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to just look at your face for an hour for free.
My acne-ridden face, as Pumi calls it.
I'm here for it. I support. And for those of you listening on the app, please continue to do so. If you are watching on the YouTube page, continue to do so. Remember to like, subscribe, all of that. Click all the bells, all the what-whats, all the whistles. Yonkinto.
Like, follow, subscribe, like,
bro, just do the right things, mate. Like, you know what you have to do. We'll see you after this. It's 7:00. It's the 24th of March. It's a Thursday. It's a Puza Thursday.
Catch you on the flip side.
Catch you on the flip.
Dr. Emma Southern holds a PhD in ancient history. She's the author of Marriage, Sex and Death. She also co-hosts her own history podcast. History is Sexy, and the podcast is very sexy too.
Caligula, rubbish. Nero, Domitian, all of them are rubbish. A penis appears in the ashes of the hearth of the house and impregnated by the god of the hearth. He's really bitchy about other historians.
Anthony read Agrippina and he said, "Why are you not a fan of Augustus?"
you want to replace your glass half empty mentality with a glass half full mindset. I'm Barrett Edelstein, and I present the Optimal Optimism podcast here on cliffcentral.com. Be empowered with practical tools around body, mind, food, exercise, and more to create a positive and abundant life. The Optimal Optimism podcast is made active by Virgin Active.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast, my perception of energy management and understanding the energy production versus energy storage, not only with the EV but also how does it get to the EV and what's the most efficient way to get it there?
It's made your entire life a lot more sustainable, if that makes sense.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Welcome back to the Burning Platform with Sis Pumi and me. Hi, Lieto.
Good morning.
Hello, Lieto. Well, just to set this scene to start, everybody knows you, Lieto, so I'm not gonna introduce you. And when Khaya comes on, I think it's gonna be fascinating to see. But I think just to set the scene, we're currently living in a world where and to actually think about it, it didn't start just yesterday. On December 18, when the riots in Tunisia started, that spread throughout the Arab world. Some call it the Arab Spring. And there were cheers and there were weeps. But it's estimated that some 61,000 people died during that time, and millions of them were displaced as refugees. And I was very fascinated. I've been reading a book by the Pope. That Pope Benedict, who then resigned in 2011, said, "May the Lord come to the aid of our world torn by so many conflicts, which even today stain the earth with blood." And today, with Russia and Ukraine, we see it happening all over again. And Pope Francis, about 8 years ago, said, "We're in a piecemeal world war with all of the various skirmishes happening all around the world." And I think, it's important to be able to speak to people who are thinkers and travelers and change makers. And I think Khaya Sithole is one of those people, when it comes to South Africa. He's a Renaissance man to a point. He has an interesting take, and Bakh'abantu has an experience with Khaya. He's a former student of Khaya when he was lecturing at Wits. And you, Lieto, and Khaya have something in common, right? Because that of shaping young minds. What's that face? It's shaping young minds.
I'm confused because he's like, I have dreads and Khaya has a bald head.
Shape that. So, and Bakh'abantu, do you know if he's coming online? Or are we still waiting for him to come online? He's joining us, I think, from the UK today.
Yeah. I think he's in the background, but I think we're still setting him up.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool.
Lieto, what's happening on your side of the world today?
It's always depression. So I have to explain what happened last week first. So what happened
to you last week?
So what happens is whenever there's load shedding or power outage, people steal cables. So unlike in Johannesburg, it's not one suburb against another. There's vast open land. And so people just track where people put cables down. And then whenever there's a power outage, they go to the open field and they dig out whatever cable is there. They don't care which cable it is. They just dig out the cable and sort of drive off with it. So the way in which you steal cables is very crude. So when they did that, they stole the telecom cable, which is the major cable that carries Welcome's internet or the Northern Free State's internet. And so I think that's the reason why I didn't have internet connection. So I could see you guys, I could watch you on YouTube, but I couldn't come into studio myself. It was the strangest thing ever. So now, apparently there's only one reliable network you can use in Welcome for internet when everything else has been stolen. So I've gotten that network now, and I'm here. I'm in the clear.
We did miss you last week. We had an incredibly fascinating conversation. But there is a lot happening in the world as a whole, but in South Africa today. We were speaking a little bit earlier about PRASA and the ghost employees. And Lubang brought up something that's beginning to sweep throughout the world and throughout South Africa. I saw a clip from, and purportedly in Kimberley, Operation Tudula. In Alex, they're calling it Operation Fiela. And if it's spreading to places like Kimberley, and Kimberley is far, and far and sparsely populated. I'm wondering if you have similar protests or action happening in your neck of the woods, Leandro.
So yeah, starting with the PRASA ghost employees, like I've said, South Africa is only realizing what's been in Welcome for years now. Like our problem of ghost employees, we started challenging it 8 years ago, and it's still a problem now, right? The people who are ghost employees are actually trying to burn down the municipal offices yesterday because of the investigations.
But I thought they were ghosts.
Yeah, they're ghosts. They're ghosts in principle. They're ghosts because they don't go to work. They're not ghosts when it comes payday. That's the difference.
And these are people that are known?
So yeah, you have like double IDs. So you have somebody having 3 ID numbers on the payroll. They're getting 3 different salaries with 3 different accounts. So that is how they do everything. So you'll find that Pumi has 3 IDs on the payroll, but 2 different or 3 different bank accounts. So other people get the money and you share it with them. It's a whole network. Yeah,
and do you have? We've spoken before about what they call the Zamazamas, and that a lot of them are from Lesotho. So do you have kind of the protests that we're seeing that are anti-illegal foreigners? Khaya, welcome. We see you.
We probably won't get those because remember, the first thing is the Free State in and of itself is a mix of foreigners, right? I'm a mix of Zambian and Lesotho. Many people are Zimbabweans, Basotho. But remember, places like Welcome have no economic viability, right? And the illegal miners are carrying our economy. And so if you now have Operation Dudula here, you're chasing away anyone with any kind of buying power, but also you're chasing away anyone who could try and remedy whatever situation we have here. And so it will probably not happen in Welcome. That's why you've never heard of xenophobic attacks or incidents here, because we're such an already mixed up community.
Wow. And then just as I was about to bring Khaya in on the conversation, he walks away from us. What's up with that? But Khaya, welcome on the show. And I think that to start off with, are you talking to us from the UK, Khaya?
I'm not talking to you from the UK. I'm trying to wake up from the UK. It's 5 a.m.
Oh man, we appreciate you. We've been awake since 4, so that's okay.
Again, that would make it 2. I was still up. I was actually lecturing someone at 2 a.m.
Oh my God. So Leandro is our one guest, and he is our man on the ground in Welcome, always bringing us the experiences of the everyday man on the ground in Welcome. And the two of you have something in common in that you shape young minds. He's a lecturer at Central University, and Bakh'abantu is the person above you. He is a former student of yours. You may not recognize him because of all of the people that have been. I am very interested because you're over there. The tour of Prince William and what is this new title? The Duchess, the
Duke
Duke
of
and
Cambridge.
Duchess of Cambridge. What is the reception like, and what is the news that you're getting back from the Caribbean out there in the UK? Because on this side of the world, we are seeing protests. I saw a little bit of his speech where he spoke about the deep shame and sorrow of slavery, and just this close to saying, "I'm sorry we did this to y'all." But this is also happening at a time when apparently Jamaica is suing the UK for reparations. What's the news?
Well, in a place like Russia, or even in a place like China, you've got active censorship where the government specifically says don't talk about this. In the UK, there is a secret pact that exists between the traditional media and royalty, in that whatever you do not embarrass the royal family. It's been remarkably awkward because now, obviously, all of a sudden, there's a PR disaster going on in the Caribbean in a remarkably important year here. It is the Jubilee year, which simply means that this whole year is actually dedicated to one weekend that's going to happen sometime in June, where we're going to spend the whole week celebrating the fact that Queen Elizabeth refuses to go anywhere. So she's been on the throne since 1952, which is when her father died. Ironically, she was in Kenya on holiday when her father died under another colony. So they seem to have been stuck with this problem for the past 70 years. So what you'll see is that the traditional media tries to find some positive spins from the fact that Prince William and his wife are having a disaster of a tour in the Caribbean. And then the tabloids, of course, who have never bothered to give a damn about the royal family, they're unhinged. They are telling it as it is, going on about how appropriately or inappropriately they address, going on about how the whole shaking of the hands through the fences is probably the most ill-advised picture moment that you're ever going to find. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but of course it is in the wrong side, because you would have thought that the media titles that pride themselves on, having integrity would be as honest as they need to be in telling us this. But unfortunately, they haven't broken away from that centuries-old tradition that for as long as Queen Elizabeth is alive, we all owe her a duty to respect her, even if her entire family has been, a citadel to scandal, particularly over the past couple of years. So it's very funny to watch, it's very funny to observe. And Jamaica is just the latest in the list of countries that have said perhaps there's nothing more embarrassing than the fact that a person who's over 95 years old, who hasn't been here in years, is referred to as the head of state.
Barbados. As the head of state?
Yeah. Officially, she's the head of state of New Zealand. She's the head of state of Australia. She was the head of state of Barbados until a few months ago, where suddenly the new prime minister seems to have woken up belatedly and said, what the hell does this mean? So suddenly the Jamaicans seem to have caught on the bandwagon. But of course, it's a long, complicated history. And guess what? It was in 1966, I think, when Neville Chamberlain referred to it as the winds of change. The fact that it's taken the better part of 60 years for the winds of change to get to the Caribbean is a great tragedy of our time.
And over there, far away, I see you still have your pulse, your finger on the pulse of what's happening in South Africa.
Yeah, because for some silly reason, when you try to run away, I forgot that in a globalized world, borders no longer exist. So the fact that you're 10,000 kilometers away has become completely irrelevant in this day and age, unless you can put on these walls, these artificial social media walls, for example, that keeps you completely insulated from what's happening out there. It actually doesn't feel like you've gone away at all. The most bizarre thing is that, usually when you go away, you sort of have to get a new cell phone number and all of these things. Well, bizarrely, in the age of, free Wi-Fi and all of that, my South African number actually works perfectly. So it's literally just me being in a different province, as it feels like, because most people who have been aware that I'm not around, they just call randomly at any point in time, and then they just have conversations, and then they're like, can we have an interview at 7 a.m. like some people I know? And I'm like, yeah, of course, 7 a.m. Why not? Not knowing that I'm many, many hours behind. So it's actually quite, the world has changed so much. It's literally very difficult for people to know that you're not even around until you explicitly tell them.
We love you, Khaya, for waking up at 5 a.m. to be with us. Khaya, we speak a lot about here on the show. I'm a big
Welcome.
fan.
I still wanted to hear about Welcome. How is this all about London now?
You missed the whole It's about
You
Velcro.
missed the whole
So you walked away
segment.
at that point.
Whenever
Sorry.
I'm on
Walked away
fire,
at that
I
point.
give a whole
No. You
segment
mentioned
about
xenophobia, and guess what? I'm a foreign in a foreign country, so of course, for me, that has particular sensitivities at this point in time. The whole idea of
They're going to get
xenophobia.
you
Will I be a victim? I
Operation
don't know.
Dudula.
You never know.
What is it going to be called in the UK?
It will be something sophisticated and elegant. It just definitely will not sound crude. They'll find a way of framing it. Yeah, disenfranchisement or some nonsense like that.
One of the things that we're watching is the conversation has been monopolized around what illegal foreigners, and one of the first people that came out guns blazing with this was Herman Mashaba. It was a very big part of his campaign, being mayor of Joburg and what the things that he was going to do in Joburg. He's been very quiet in the past couple of weeks as things have escalated with the EFF and various kind of factions, and things have come to a head yesterday, I think, with the opening of a case by one of the EFF. I think he's a branch. He's a branch chairperson. And it's been very fascinating to watch. What is your take on what's happening and where is it going to?
2 days ago.
Leto says it won't happen in Velcom because the foreign nationals keep the economy going.
In Velcom, it may happen, and less Lekos there will not even know about it because literally no one covers Velcom for anything. If people bother to cover Velcom, the first thing would have dealt with is why it still has an Afrikaans name, because I'm always fascinated by the origins of the names of the cities. So the first thing would have dealt with was why it's still called Velcom. So yeah, I think once just gets away from there, probably no one will notice if anything happens there. But quite interestingly, I've always had a very different take on this whole illegal immigration versus xenophobia question. Firstly, I strongly believe that Mashaba was greatly misunderstood last year ahead of his election campaign. Interestingly, the EFF was equally misunderstood in that Mashaba would have never stood a chance on any ballot if he said that immigration is a problem. There's absolutely no way you can get away with such explicit xenophobia, particularly in South Africa. The whole point that was being raised is the fact that, unfortunately, in South Africa, our border control and our border management is so completely non-existent. There is a high incidence of illegal immigration. And illegal immigration is a problem. It doesn't matter what your political persuasion is. Illegal immigration is a problem. It's always been a problem. On the other hand, what the EFF then sounded like it was saying is that it was advocating for a completely lawless society where people can walk from Cape to Cairo, which ironically was inspired by Cecil John Rhodes many, many years ago. And I'm not sure if the EFF is acutely aware of the things that it says that seem to be taken from the Cecil John Rhodes handbook. But again, equally then, the problem was that people didn't really try to deal with that actual point that was being raised. And the point that was being raised by the EFF in particular is that, well, actually, if you look at examples across the globe of trade blocs, so if you talk about the European Union, what the European Union took the decision, I think it started way back in 1973, actually, was the fact that, well, actually, what we want to be able to do is want to be able to enable easier migration of labor and capital across the borders of Europe. So they start
goods and money. Goods
Yeah.
and money. You want
Those are the
ease
main
of
things.
access for goods and money across the various
Exactly.
borders.
So once you do that, you obviously have to write the rules that enable that to happen. And it starts off by, enabling capital flows, and actually people migration becomes the very last thing that you do. So the Schengen area, for example, was at the end of that particular process. The euro, the common currency, happened, I think, around in 2000. It's been over 22 years. So it's always been a very coordinated process to say that the cost of living is reduced when we don't literally bill someone for buying a loaf of bread in Beitbridge and then crossing across to Zimbabwe, and then suddenly that price doubles because of the prices you're charging at the border gates. That's the whole point. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, of course, obviously Africa is so slow, it's taken the better part of 50 years for them to get it across. And the whole point was that, okay, cool, once you have that entire economic zone working, surely the next step becomes the ease of migration across those borders. So that's literally what the issue is here. Now, of course, Malema doesn't feel, burdened to be diplomatic about anything, and he doesn't feel the need to be able to explain himself to people who probably don't share his persuasion. So he comes out screaming about open borders, and then people are saying, "You're talking nonsense. How can we, a country that still doesn't even know who's here and who isn't here, suddenly advocate for open borders?" So I think both political parties were greatly misunderstood, and they suffered at the polls in one way or another. Well, the EFF would say it suffered. I don't think Action SA would say that they suffered, because it then turned out that many more people resonated with the Action SA message and said, "We think there's a problem." And this was something quite curiously I'd written about, I think, 12 or 13 years ago. So when I first started traveling to Europe, I started documenting a very interesting phenomenon that you saw about how people who enter countries as immigrants suddenly seem to have a relatively stronger ability to ingratiate into the economy. And that was something that baffled me. So when I traveled to France for the first time, and then you suddenly started seeing a lot of Black immigrants, and then whether they're from the Ivory Coast or Senegal or Algeria and places like that. And, you go to all these places where there is, ironically, as a consequence of colonial history, where people feel that those places are where they need to go. And the point that was being raised there is that in all these other countries, those minorities, when they arrive, they literally have got nothing to work with. They've got nothing that validates their presence in that economy. So you found that their ability to hustle their way was much stronger than what you're seeing in being, evidenced by South
with the
Africa,
natives.
for example. So you saw those people starting shops and, running those particular parts of the economy in manners that made you think, wait, it looks like these people actually seem to have an idea of what needs to be done here. So that was the contrast. And then you looked at South Africans, where South African citizens just felt that, actually things are not working the way that they were. And I was fascinated by why, if you go to these European countries, the immigrants out there seem to be actually trying to occupy a particular economic space. And guess what? In South Africa, you saw the incidents of that, where suddenly we say that, but all these people who are foreigners, why do they have these plaza shops and we don't? And that's a replica of what you actually see across the globe, because what they do is that when they get there, they've got no access to any of the social services, to any of the economic systems. So what they then start doing is that they try to find parts of the economic value chain that are accessible. And parts of the economic value chain that are accessible are the informal aspects of the economic value chain, which is what you will see here. So when you come to, even France is always a good example, because I think it's always very interesting, the contrast. So you see these places where suddenly feels like I'm in the hood, for example. So those access to those accessible parts of the economic value chain, that's where they find their space, and then that's where they make things thrive. So in South Africa, when you then hear that people say, oh, the Somalians and the Pakistanis and all of this are running these particular parts of the economy, it's because that's the accessible part, and that's where they become visible. You suddenly then discover that those same immigrants then struggle to move up the labor value chain or the economic value chain, because suddenly, if you're trying to run a bank, then the question of, well, where's the documentation, where are the skills and all of these things. So it's much easier for them to penetrate that side. The problem that's uniquely South African, unfortunately, is that unlike a place like France, for example, where the citizens of the country themselves probably have got much greater penetration on the formal parts of the economy, the contestation
It's
in
our unemployment
even high unemployment is precisely at that bottom end of the economic value chain. So South Africans find themselves being displaced by foreigners, or even if they're not displaced, because mathematically they're not being displaced, the view is that, wait, hold on, perhaps it is undesirable for even one foreign shopkeeper to thrive when there is one South African citizen who's unemployed. So mathematically, we're not being displaced, but unfortunately, there are far too many incidences of people looking around and saying, actually, as far as I'm concerned, the reason I don't have a job is this. So it happened twice in the world. So it happened with Brexit and it happened with Trump. So I've actually done some research on why Trump and Brexit happened. And when Brexit was about to happen, everybody that I spoke to said, it's never going to happen. And it then turned out...
I was one of those people. I was sitting here on my couch as they were counting the votes. I went to bed and woke up and Brexit had happened. I was blown away.
Yeah. Similarly with Trump, I remember I was at the JSC when the votes were being counted in 2016. So the question that I then started asking when I then traveled to the UK after Brexit, I haven't been to the US since Trump happened because I just didn't know if I was ever going to be able to get out or even get in. It then
Or
turned
stay
out,
alive.
yeah, all the people that you and I had spoken to were people that were in the cosmopolitan part of the labor system in the United Kingdom. So it's very unlikely that you had friends who were based in the United Kingdom and working in McDonald's, because very few of our South African friends actually leave South Africa and come and work at McDonald's. So what then had happened was that whilst we were all celebrating how cosmopolitan London had become, or even Manchester, or even Liverpool, and our friends had got jobs there, the opening up of the borders actually affected the peripheries of the country, in that it was in all these forgotten small economies like Velcom, where suddenly people said, the reason I don't have a job as a waiter is because when I went to McDonald's yesterday, there was someone working there as a waiter whose language I couldn't even understand. This person turns out is from Eastern Europe and all of these things. So it was then felt that the reason so many of those marginal constituencies had higher unemployment and they've got, labor problems was simply because somebody many years ago had said, let's open up the borders. And when the borders had opened up, then you had these Eastern Europeans then coming in and crowding out those particular citizens. So that's why the Brexit message that Nigel Farage in particular championed was never about London. He couldn't have been bothered by what happened in London, but the issue was that there were so many displaced citizens across the periphery of the United Kingdom. For them, Brexit resonated, and that's how we all missed it. Same thing with Donald Trump. So the Donald Trump phenomenon actually started in 1992. When Bill Clinton was campaigning to be elected president, in that at the same time, they were trying to rewrite the agreement of the trade agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and that eventually became what we call NAFTA. It's the North American Free Trade Agreement. And one of the points that was raised there is that because America and Canada were so advanced in terms of the labor laws that they had, in particular in terms of the labor protections that they had compared to Mexico, the possibility that would happen once the borders were opened is that many more businesses would see Mexico as the easiest place to do business, because it's obviously much cheaper to do business.
They took your jobs overseas.
Exactly. So in one presidential debate, and I think this point was first raised on Larry King Live around February 1992, one of the candidates who then actually contested the election, he referred to as the giant sucking sounds of American jobs going south, simply on the basis that the agreement opened up the borders into a country where the regulations were so non-existent, it would be much cheaper for American businesses to move across. And guess what? Over the next 30 years, so many more jobs moved down the border, down south. When Trump came up in 2014 and 15 and said he wants to run the election, he simply went to the border. That's why the whole Mexican wall thing actually originated from, because he went to all those communities that exist much closer to the Mexican border, and he could see the loss of jobs that had happened since 1992 in that area, and the fact that the American job market had spiked out, the Mexican job market had spiked up in relation to the jobs that used to be on this side of the border. And that's why he went to those particular communities. And then he says the only reason you don't have a job, the only reason you're economically marginalized is because somebody, the bloody Democrats, opened up the border many years ago. So all I'm going to do is put up a wall and get you your job back. And he was guaranteed a ticket into the White House.
Talking about the economics and the fascinating thing about those numbers and what they are, and because it's your area of expertise, accounting, I was also very interested looking at the IEC's reckoning, as it were, when they put out all of the balance sheets of the various political parties. Leto and Khaya, I'm very interested to know what your takeout was looking at those balance sheets, because I only have finance for non-financial managers, right? So, did you see any of those, Leto?
The one that was particularly interesting for me was the EFF, right? And how much they have without having as much share of the IEC's money as the other parties. I mean, they're doing something right? The amount of employees almost tripled. Right?
Their assets
are all over the place, right? And so I'm there's something they're doing very, very right, and they're keeping it
Or,
very secret as
or
well.
there's something they're doing very wrong.
Yes, either way, it's very successful. It's making them a lot of money, whatever that thing is.
And that's what it looks
Because
like. Khaya is
yeah,
Khaya, who is the ecos is person, is shaking his head vigorously. Khaya, you disagree?
Of course, I disagree. So I actually put up those balance sheets over the weekend because I had to do sort of like a lecture thing for some journalists on behalf of an organization called My Vote Counts. So that's the organization that essentially has been pushing for the Political Party Funding Act to become law. So what we're now trying to figure out is once the law is fully implemented, because so far we've only had the first 9 months of implementation. So we're heading up to the 12 months, in fact, expiring in exactly 7 days' time. So what we're trying to figure out is what the disclosures in relation to political party funding are actually going to look like on the basis of an entire year. So what I then had to go and extract was what has historically been disclosed, because now we're trying to figure out, we're trying to map what the new numbers need to look like and what they mean. So what those spreadsheets actually represent are incomplete. They're snapshots. They're completely incomplete spreadsheets. So because historically the IEC has allocated money to political parties through the Represented Political Party Fund, what they've always said is that whoever takes money from the IEC must explain what they did with the money. So what these political parties do is that they get their allocation. So the ANC got 86 million rand last year. In the last reported cycle, rather. So what you're then supposed to do is that you're supposed to go back to the IEC and say, this is what we did with the money. So what the parties then do is that they send the IEC screenshots of their finances. So what they will do is that they'll say, okay, we received 86 million rand from the IEC, and we spent 83 million, which is what the ANC said, of that on salaries. Okay, so the DA says that we received, I think, about 32 million rand, and we spent about 23 million in salaries. We spent XYZ on the website and all of those things. So the reason they do it like that is because up until this new act came into operation last year, they didn't feel under any obligation to explain anything else to the IEC. And the IEC equally didn't have the latitude to say, no, we want every single bank account that you have. So the IEC simply said, account for what we've given you. So that's what you saw with those particular spreadsheets. The EFF made a mistake. And the mistake that the EFF made is that they then put it in their disclosures that they spent the IEC money on acquiring properties. So then you have this interesting number that says that we've got assets in terms of properties of around 26 million rand. So we assume that is their main headquarters in Gandhi Street. So they want to give the impression that they specifically spend the IEC money on acquiring that particular property, which is one possible thing. What I read from it was the fact that the EFF in particular has an interest in following that approach. And the reason that approach makes sense to them is that the moment everyone saw that they acquired this massive building at the epicenter of the CBD, many people would have said, this is not a cheap building to
Where
have.
did the money come from?
Exactly. So because the EFF wants to position itself as this party that is so bare-knuckled, they literally work on a volunteer model, for example, where for them it is all about the principle of trying to govern rather than the money involved in politics. It made sense for them to be able to say that should anyone ask about where we acquired this one single most expensive item, we can clearly say that this came from the public, it came from public funds, so there's absolutely no need for us to explain anything else. Because if the EFF had said that, oh, no, we use the IEC funding to fund salaries, for example, they receive about 19 million rand a year, and somebody had worked out that the cost of their property is 25 million, the most obvious and the most immediate question would be to say, well, hold on, for a party like this one that seems to project this particular image to the public, where did you get the 25 million rand in order to finance your property, plant, and equipment? And the EFF is better served by saying, no, we got it from you. So therefore, none of you can ask the question of where the money came from.
I was also interested to see, just because they had the disclosures of the various private funding that they were able to bring in a couple of months ago as well, to see on their balance sheets, then the snapshot that we saw of their balance sheets, the accounting thereof, so it's very shady. And this has always been my fascination about how you put together financials, is you can hide so much in plain sight. right? And a little bit of what I saw with the EFF was that too. But I was also fascinated that Action SA, which has also been, as you say, bare knuckle about, this perception that they are bare knuckling it. I didn't see anything from the Action SA. Did you?
Yeah, so the disclosures that I speak about were published by the IC in relation to the 2020 financial year. So it actually ends in March 2020. So because of the time lags associated with it, we still don't have a picture of what March 2021 looks like. So the disclosures up to March 2021 is the first time that we expect to see Action SA being documented there. So obviously they may show up then, but it's very unlikely that you're going to see much, because remember, the Represented Political Parties Fund requires you to have been represented at either the national legislature or even the provincial legislature. And of course, Action SA until November last year, it had no representation in either way. So there's probably going to be yet another gap where people are going to be like, but this party looks like it's rich and the IEC knows nothing about it. But it's simply because of the time lags that we are dealing with here. So it's probably going to be sometime in the middle of next year where we get the disclosures leading to March, because March 2022 next week is the end of the political year. So therefore, only then will we then see insight into Action SA. But even then, it probably won't be much, because the IEC hasn't really given them anything. So in relation to the disclosures we saw, there's nothing to compare. The closest you're going to get is in the new disclosures, which are the ones relating to tell us everything that went into your bank account.
Does the skill exist at the IEC to fully interrogate these numbers that are coming through to them? Because it's a particular skill. Do they know how to, or are they like me, finance for non-financial managers, right? They can kind of read what it is, but are they, fully interrogating? Because there are lots of conversations that happen, and Cyril Ramaphosa is currently in the throes of a discussion around where did the money come from to fund his campaign, and also, did the money come out of government coffers to fund ANC internal battles and all of that? So does the IEC have the skill required to fully interrogate this? And if they do, what does that really mean in terms of the rest of us and what we see and hear?
You should have attended our lecture.
Why didn't I invite her?
Because it's for people who work normal hours, not this 5 a.m. stuff. It's still 5 a.m. here. I'm going to keep reminding you that. Well, the point that I raised is that question is a tricky one, because the IEC does not work on a model of treating political parties with suspicion. So their understanding is that we've asked for the disclosures, we're going to get the disclosures. The questions that you are asking are forensic in approach, and the forensic approach always works on the premise that I've got something to find. There is something that is wrong. Exactly. So the IC doesn't work on that premise. So what will have to happen is that it will have to be prompted to take a forensic approach, and the prompt will be, if suddenly the sum of the disclosures of what we gave you as the IEC versus what you said you received from the donations and versus what you said from other income sources, if the sum of those disclosures does not match the cost of that rally that you had in November, we have a problem. Only then will the IEC even entertain this idea of a forensic head to say, we think your disclosures are inadequate or inaccurate. So that's the only time that we're going to get them. So what we were trying to put together last week was a simple basis on, at what point in time do we look at the sum of disclosures and say, this is nonsense, this doesn't make sense, and then craft questions around it to say, we don't think there's everything has been disclosed, or some elements are missing. So it's actually going to be initiated outside of the IEC, because the IEC has taken the approach that we are working on a bona fide basis with the political parties. They are going to be as honest, and of course they're going to say that they've been audited. So if their auditors are saying that this is the state of affairs, the IEC going to have to start with as a premise. It is only in instances of clear misrepresentation where you suspect they will be prompted to then say, wait, hold on, this just doesn't make sense, and only then we'll be able to deliberate on the forensic aspects of it. But they do have the skills. Sorry, that's a very important thing because we have obviously been asking the question. They're saying they're building the skills, they're building the forensic skills, but again, until we see a test of those skills in a live environment where they literally then say, we took the disclosures of that party, this is what we did to, pick them apart, and this is how we then went back to the party and said, try again. Only then we will know how strong or how useful those skills are, but they're definitely putting them together, actually.
Leto, you mustn't let me monopolize this conversation because I have many things that I would love to talk to Khaya about. So you can jump in anytime if you've got a question.
Yeah. The first thing is, also I was also thinking about that. Like, so to what end? So what if, let's say, party A does mess up to a point that we're like, okay, this is clearly like a flagrant disregard for any sort of proper accounting rules, right? Or anything an auditor would actually see as something wrong. To what end would it go to? Like, to what degree? Because it's also like uncharted territory. But the other thing is, I wanted to ask Khaya about his article with Russia and South Africa fence sitting, right? And my one question I keep going over in my head is, does the ANC government have any other position to take on Russia or China or Cuba, for instance, other than fence sitting, when it's a conflict or a problem that they raise? Because it seems like in this Russia-Ukraine situation, our only play, or the only play the ANC had, was to fence sit and not overtly go against Russia, which would look like also obviously going for the US. So what do you think about that, Khaya?
I think I've tweeted this before that, South Africa won the 1996 African Cup of Nations. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, we didn't. Nelson Mandela won the African Cup of Nations. So it is 1995. The government of Sani Abacha in Nigeria is in this habit of killing activists who piss it off. So Ken Saro-Wiwa has a problem against, ironically, what Shell is doing in Nigeria. So he comes out and says, we've got a problem. So just like Gwede Mantashe would many, many years later champion the cause of Shell against communities, Ken Saro-Wiwa was doing the opposite. And the government of Nigeria then decides to assassinate him. And Nelson Mandela breaks the code, because the code that existed amongst AU leaders is that whatever you do not ever find fault in your fellow leaders. So that's why African leaders are not in the habit of calling each other out. So
they don't call each other out.
Exactly. So Nelson Mandela comes out and said, it's nonsense what has happened in Nigeria. The assassination of Ken Saro was a problem. And it became such a diplomatic crisis. The Nigerian government refused to send its soccer team to play in South Africa, the African Cup of Nations in 1990. This is one of the best teams in the continent. And that's the only reason we ever won the African Cup of Nations.
I didn't remember that the Super Eagles were here.
That's what happened. You ban Nigeria and then you win.
I remember that.
So that's why we've never won it since, because we haven't had a diplomatic crisis at the same level. The key problem here is that South Africa cannot, on the one hand, be allowed to get away with this idea of being the world's moral conscience, because we're the ones that always remind the world on why what's happening in Palestine in particular is so problematic, because we always tell people we've been through this. We know how bad it is. We know exactly what the scale of this human crisis is. So on the one hand, we are the country that has put that position that we're always going to stand on the side of the small man, of the marginalized. That's what informs our position on the Sahrawi people. That's how it informs our position on the Palestinian-Israel conflict. And so in this particular instance, it is not open to South Africa to say, well, a country may have been invaded, but because we're friends with the invaders, suddenly we're going to go and sit on the fence. South Africa doesn't sit on the fence. South Africa takes principal views. That's why we can say that actually, ironically, we want to support Cuba, because we are saying that even though part of the reason the Cuban economy is always in doldrums is because of, the sanctions implemented by the United States, we are going to help the Cubans because we understand that actually the sanctions have got an adverse effect on that particular country. So if you're willing to tell the United States to go and jump and still offer humanitarian assistance to Cuba of 50 million in its latest iteration, you're not going to be famous, as you're not going to be known as a country that sits on the fence until you get to an instance where you specifically decide to depart from what the world has come to understand about you and say, this is what we want to do. So it's a cop-out by this particular administration. It's a cop-out by this particular government, and it's them feeling that they're protecting their international interests, whatever that means. So that's literally where we find ourselves. And for me, the greatest tragedy is that, whenever you see people who are adamant that you must support Putin, for example, they always go back to this thing that we're part of the BRICS nation. Guys, there's no such thing as a BRICS. It was a bloody essay written by Jim O'Neill at WMC, as you can get. He was a Goldman Sachs economist who wrote an article about Brazil, Russia, India, and China, talking about how those countries had this opportunity to actually just, have a much stronger foothold on the global economy. It was a bloody essay written in the United States, as WMC as you can get. So isn't it truly ironic that those that are completely anti-WMC then say, oh, no, we must do this because we're part of BRICS? I'm like, what the hell is BRICS? The fundamental of what everything happens in those four countries. South Africa's got nothing to do with what those other four countries do. We have absolutely no standing in that particular conversation. What we were given was a political entry point. So suddenly people say, yeah, there's something called BRICS, but literally we've got no basis being part of that particular. It's, we impose themselves. And the irony is that it was a white man, Jim O'Neill, who imposed us there. And suddenly all of those that are like, yeah, you must do this, you must support that, have forgotten that the only reason we're even having the conversation is because a capitalist from Goldman Sachs told us that he's writing an essay, and then we imposed ourselves in it.
So the issue of skills, speaking about kind of the economists and the people who make these kinds of pronouncements, and skills, which is something South Africans love to complain about. We don't have the skills base. Khaya, you have a very interesting journey in terms of building a skills base, particularly in the chartered accountancy world. And I love your approach, because on the surface of it, Khaya is a guy from
the middle of nowhere,
a little village in KZN.
At least it was not welcome, but it was, middle of nowhere.
Oh wow!
What? And you yourself have a background that is a very typical South African background, where you've had to scrounge and scratch and get to where you have gotten to by your own pulling yourself up by bootstraps and being helped along by various individuals, and yet you set yourself a challenge to affect and change a particular space in the chartered accountancy world. Please tell us a little bit about that and why you did it and how you did it.
I wish it could have been in the sciences, things like medicine, maybe things that make a difference. Accountants are known for just documenting what other people have done rather than changing things. So it's an awkward profession. Look, it was bizarre. It all happened in Facebook. So someone writes on my wall to say, oh yeah, we've got a problem. All the black people failed. I was like, you're talking nonsense. And this was around November 2010. So I got fascinated by that. I was like, oh, what do you mean all the black people failed? I was like, it just doesn't make sense for any university in the country to have zero pass rate for black people when there had been 800 of us when I started in first year. So that's actually just initiated it. And then I was like, oh, okay, cool. Let me try and see what this thing is all about. And then I started reading it, and then I was like, oh, actually, I think this can be fixed. So that's what actually prompted the initial foray into academia. I had taken an interest in it before, but it had never been very lucrative. It still isn't very lucrative. So I never thought I'd go back there for a long term. So 2010 happens, and then someone writes on my Facebook wall, and then I was like, okay, cool, let me try and go and fix this. So then I started in 2011, and then I got stuck. It's been 11 years now. And it just looked quite interesting how I felt it was relatively easy to actually solve the big crisis, because you really had to, all that was needed was a very intimate understanding of what the issues were, and even more intimate understanding what the system was, and then this idea of what you wanted the outcomes to be. So you just map those three elements together, and then you work on it every single day. It's actually much easier to run. The problem, of course, is that I always say that my great regret is that it became something that I did rather than something that the system did. Because, as I said, I don't think the country's greatest crisis was a lack of accountants at any point in time. There are far greater needs in other skill set, but because I'm not part of those ecosystems, I wouldn't know where to start. So it always feels like it became a bit of a gamble in relation to a particular profession rather than a universal fix of the system at large, which is what the politicians and the policymakers are supposed to be doing, but they're clearly aren't really committed to doing that. So
they're not committed to doing that. And this is why, I very strongly feel that it's going to take individuals starting and bringing along a whole lot of other individuals to get systemic changes.
Yeah. The one interesting part is that in spite of all the work that I do, I strongly disagree with the idea of the South African bursaries model, for example. And the reason I always disagree with it is that the one problem that it always emanates is that once you get non-state actors involved, they have the ability to exercise an element of discretion. And that element of discretion is me deciding that I'm going to put together a scholarship, and that scholarship is going to be for students of a particular caliber. And what will then happen is that I will then select those particular students that I feel need to be part of this particular program. And of course, they're going to stand a much better chance of succeeding. And the problem that exists with that is that what we then do is that we fail to tackle the one great problem of South Africa, and that's a problem of the persistence of inequality. So what we then seeing happening is that inequality dimension is now being replicated amongst even Black societies. So I particularly went to a school in rural KZN many, many years ago. And I was one of the students that used to be accused of being a top achiever by the teachers. So that worked well. And then at some point in time, we had this corporate entity that came through to that particular village. And then it says, we want the brightest kids that you have. And then they all gave us scholarships. And then we went off to Model C schools. And then many, many years later, about 10 or 15 years later, when I went to revisit that particular community, and then I looked around at the people that I'd been in class with, and most of them hadn't just gone very far. And the question that started haunting me was to say, well, actually, what exactly was the benefit of us taking the people that used to be of great assistance to their own peers, because we used to teach them maths and all of that stuff. In fact, I started writing grade 10 maths papers when I was still in grade 8. So I was helping the grade 10s when I was in grade 8.
Yeah, because we mostly learn through peers, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what that system then did is that it took out those peers that were actually lifting up everybody else, and then it completely disengaged them from the system. So then the system at large remained largely idle. So then you go back and then you say, yeah, in fact, there were 5 of us that were taken by that first cohort. And then you say, okay, so all the 5 of us are going to be able to drive into this particular community in our Range Rovers, but then what are we driving into? Because now suddenly what we've seen is that there's a new manifestation of inequality. There's the 5 of us that are plucked out, and then the 60 or 70 classmates of ours that were left behind and have been left behind for many, many years. And now there's an intergenerational effect of that. So I'm not a fan of these discretionary models. The state is always best suited to allocate resources equitably across different parts of the population. So the one example that we saw, and this is what we used to fight during Fees Must Fall, in that I still think the NSFAS model is completely stupid. It's the dumbest thing that you've ever seen.
Makes no sense.
Because what happens is that the big corporates, they go and sponsor the smartest students. The smartest students are the ones that actually will get through FITS without any form of intervention, because the reason you're investing in them is because you're like, that's a winner. That's going to win, right? And then we allow these corporates to come back and say, no, our bursary program is perfect, because I'm like, no, it isn't. You took candidates that had been so well prepared, surprisingly, by the basic education system. They were always going to thrive at UCT. So you actually didn't make a change. What you did is that with the resources that you could have had, you failed to deal with the larger population of students whose basic education experience had been so compromised, they don't stand a chance at UCT unless somebody assists them. And it is those students that we then burden with the loan system, knowing very well that their pass rates are much lower. So what you then have is that people that are poor get trapped into the loan system. Most of them, the data in front of us tells us that they're not going to survive the system. So therefore, those that are born poor are then condemned into intergenerational poverty by the bloody state itself. And then the people that get out of the system and that get access into the economic labor chain are the ones that were the smarter ones. So now there's this new manifestation of inequality. And that's where the clever blacks came from, as my homeboy from Ghana once called all of us.
Hey, dude, I absolutely. So 11 years later, how many CAs do you have on your spreadsheet?
Well, I think something weird happened is that somebody said that we need to create a spreadsheet for London because since I've been here, every weekend I've been meeting up with so many of them that now live here. I was like, I didn't know so many of you people that ran out from the country. So even this coming weekend, we're having a reunion with a completely separate group, around 20. So even if we build the London spreadsheet, it is probably around 120 in the UK right now from that spreadsheet. The universal spreadsheet, it keeps expanding, and sometimes I forget. So a couple of months ago, no, it's actually 6 weeks ago, I go to Rockets because it was the day of the board exam results. So I go to Rockets and, we're celebrating. So some people, you treat you like we had Rockets, and then somebody comes. And then this person says, we first met in 2011. I'm like, oh, okay. It's been 11 years. It's like, yeah, that's how long this journey is. So obviously a person like that, at some point in time, I would have forgotten that actually, I once met this person 11 years ago. They said this is what they wanted to do. And then they tell you their journey. So sometimes you actually discover many years later that, oh, somebody says, oh yeah, by the way, I see my name is missing. And this is the story. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Wow.
I arrived here in London a couple of weeks ago, and unfortunately, I don't remember everybody, granularly. So someone says, no, it was this year in 2016. I attended this class. This is what you said. This is how we got here. And here I am. And that's the first time that I've had the conversation with the person because she used to be part of like 600 people and all of that. So there's a lot. So officially, the spreadsheet is standing at around 600, but I keep getting told that the spreadsheet is incomplete because there's some people that I haven't documented.
600 lives you've changed. That's amazing. And do you have a system where exponential growth, right? That's what we also learn there by accounting and economics, that's where the power is, right? Isn't the exponential growth. So do you have a system where those individuals, those 600 odd individuals, are themselves paying it forward, as it were?
Well, we're being failed by the bigger system because the best place to do this is in academia, and academia is the one place where they don't get paid. So it's remarkably difficult for me to convince all of them to go back into academia. And I always tell the story of the most bizarre thing that happened when I started teaching. I moved back to KZN, and I had relatives in KZN. KZN, somebody just used to stumble upon a hill and say, I think we could put a couple of houses here. So ridiculously badly planned. A place like Lamontville, it's like a monumental disaster. I have absolutely no idea how anyone thought people would live in a place like that. So
I have no idea how they park their cars. That's
the point.
The level of clutch control you have to have in order to drive out of your driveway, and mostly in reverse. I'm crazy. Just saying.
So when I moved to KZN, I stayed with relatives who had that problem because there's absolutely no place to park. So I left my car in Johannesburg. I was like, there's no point in me taking my car to KZN. I'm going to take taxis because that's what everyone does. So I start teaching, and then, eventually you say to people, oh, this is what I do, this is how I've done it, and all the stuff. And then they're like, okay, that's a very interesting story. Until one of them one day finds me in a taxi. Then they go back to class, they're like, nah, this can't be, this is nonsense. It's not possible. And if it is possible, that's not the profession that I want to be in. They're like, you can't say you're that and then take a text with us. I'm like, are you actually serious? And
there's a thing about lecturers and taxis. That's the same thing I get over here. Yeah. And the cheapest mode of transport in Welcome is a taxi. It's 13 Rand for a taxi anyway.
And me being an accountant, of course, that was for me. I'm like, why the hell am I going to spend hundreds of thousands of rand when there's a form of transport that's cheap and accessible? But apparently that wasn't going to fly. So I ended up having to buy a car.
Well, this has been an incredibly fascinating conversation and very enlightening. And I hope that the listeners had the same. And I think this is a perfect note to end this conversation. There's a message here from Sanele Nkosi who says, Khaya is a gem, touched my life since 2012 while on my journey to CA. More power to you, brother. So thank you for waking up. I remember
very well. It was in my honors class of 2012. Yeah.
Sanele is one of our regulars. Thank you, Sanele, for sharing that with us. Khaya, thank you for waking up at 5 a.m. to be with us. Leato, you didn't say much. today, and I suspected this is what you were going to do when we were WhatsApping and talking about this particular show. So
No,
I'm devastated you didn't say a lot today.
No, I'm such a huge fan of Khaya. So I know him through friends, and I've heard about his legendary conversations. So this was my opportunity to listen. He's such a his views are so great because they're so different from mine, right? I develop my own views, and whenever I hear him or see his tweets, he's always got a new, fresh approach, and I'm always keen for people who have these fresh approaches that I don't necessarily see. And it was a pleasure listening to him.
Khaya, you have a funny Twitter account and Facebook account. Please tell the people what it is so they can follow, like, and subscribe.
It's at Koruska Khaya, Koruskakaya. That's on Twitter. I'm not sure if anyone is still on Facebook, but if you're still there, I don't know what you're doing there. It's at Khaya Sithole. You're living welcome, brother. I really think that you're gonna have to be forgiven for a lot of those sins. So yeah, those are the two. I also occasionally tap into Instagram, but dear God, the narcissism that happens there, don't bother.
Khaya Sithole, thank you for being a blessing to all those 600 people and more. And thank you for blessing us with your presence here today. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and happy Thursday. Happy Puza Thursday, everybody said. So go out there and be great.
Thank you. Bye.